Carrie, hi.
Hello, hello. So good to see you.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Doing good. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, we could have talked, I don't know, 2 hours more. I already warned you before a little bit that we have questions for probably 2 years. So,
That's fine. Ask as many as you want.
yay, let's go. First of all, very important thing, because you are have been generous enough to offer a giveaway.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Oh, so the giveaway is a paperback copy of the second draft, and it is signed and personalized. So that's the giveaway.
Ooh, that's a very good prize. Well, we don't do difficult stuff here at Sapphic World Book Club, so we're just going to ask you to pick a number between 0 and 100. I've picked a number before. It's on this little page.
Ooh, okay.
And send your number to Jess, our co-host Jess in the chat, and
Okay.
she will see which one will be um the closest and will win this
Okay.
amazing giveaway. Okay, Carrie,
Okay.
deep breath. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
this amazing book.
Thank you so much. Really,
Ho-
thank you.
I saw your newsletter and you were like, "Oh my God, what the hell is happening? How are
Yeah.
you doing with all this?"
It's overwhelming, to say the least. Overwhelming in the best possible way. Like, I am just so unbelievably grateful for the energy and enthusiasm and care and love with which people have received this book. I mean, the numbers are great. Like the Amazon chart, like I won't lie, that's great. I'm thrilled about that. But what means so much more to me than that are the messages I've gotten, the DMs, emails. Like I've heard from so many of you, and I imagine some of you who are in here right now. I haven't been able to check and see who else here, but I'm sure some of you in here I've heard from, and I'm just so grateful for you trusting me with your stories and your words and these vulnerable parts of yourself. I put this book into the world in a way that was very vulnerable for me, and I was very nervous about how it would be received. But I really feel like I've given you all this very vulnerable, fragile piece of myself, and you have all taken that piece in and then given me a little bit of yourselves too. So I just feel so, so grateful for that.
And we start with the poetry immediately. That's beautiful. So tell us, how did this story come about?
Okay, so this story, and folks will not be surprised to hear this, I think, if they're familiar with the source. This story originally started as Grace and Frankie fan fiction about 10 years ago, which is impossible to believe that it's been that long. I wrote this story, I didn't finish it. It was sort of a forever unfinished work in progress, which I always felt really bad about, but life circumstances meant I didn't finish it. And then I never thought I would change it or turn it into a book. I never thought that it would work as a book. And then I started to think about it and I thought about it more. And I went, you know what? I want to go back to it and I want to make it better because I knew I could. I could make it into the story that I wasn't able to tell 10 years ago. Because in that last 10 years, I have grown and changed and become more of myself. So I think I was ready to tell it. And so I went back to it. And the book, the second draft, in many respects is very different from the original fanfic. Sadie specifically is basically an entirely new character. I completely rewrote her. And I added a ton of new material. Like the first quarter of the book is brand new. None of that is in the fanfic. And same with the ending. The ending I never got to write. And so now I got to write it. So I feel like I finished that unfinished project that I never started, and that makes me feel really good.
So why did you think it's important to finish this story about late in life lesbians? Or
So the story itself was very, very important to me. It allowed me, it was sort of when I originally wrote it, it was sort of a vehicle through which I could process a lot of feelings and thoughts and, be in a space with other people who were doing something very similar in terms of the feedback that I was getting. And so it has always been incredibly, incredibly important to me. And so I think in that respect, I kind of knew I wanted to return to it because it mattered so much. But in terms of the older women element, I mean, I don't have to tell you all that we have so little representation of older women in media and books. Sapphic romance, I think, is by far the best subgenre out there of any in terms of representing older women. Like, obviously, there are some amazing books about and by older women. Obviously Lee Winter, Claire Ashton. There are a lot of names that I could potentially mention, but there's still not enough, I think. There needs to be more. And I wanted to write a story that made aging look like possibility, as opposed to kind of dwindling or ending. I think, I'm almost 42. I'll be 42 next month. And as I get older, I'm really starting to sort of having to reconcile with the fact that, some doors are starting to close, right? And life does not seem necessarily as open as it did when I was 20. But that's not true, right? We can grow and change and become more of ourselves and find new things about ourselves all the way to the end, right? Sadie has this line where she says something to the effect of, if I'm not having epiphanies up until my last breath, then I failed myself. And I really do believe that. I think that life, if you're living it right, life is always about that kind of growth and change and self-examination.
Jamie? Nope.
Nope, not yet. Go ahead.
No, 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 not yet. Okay, well, I've got a lot of them, so I'll keep asking. Because we have people ask questions on their registration form,
Yeah,
so I have a lot of them.
great.
So if you Desdemona asked something. She said, "I rarely highlight parts of a sapphic romance novel that I feel like I need to remember. When you were writing the book, were you conscious that there would be passages that could be so impactful for your readers?"
Oh, I love that question. And it's such a flattering question. Yes, in some places, in the sense that it impacted me. And I didn't know, right? You never know when you're writing how, what you're going to write is going to impact others, right? And there's always going to be stuff that didn't impact you when you were writing it that really hits others hard, right? So it's always out of your hands. So I never knew, right? Like directly, would this actually impact? But there were lines that when I wrote them, I kind of went, oh, and I remember writing Sadie saying to Anne, and this is, I think, the line that I've gotten the most feedback on directly, where she says to Anne, "Of course, you hate poetry. You are poetry, and you don't like yourself very much." And when I wrote that, I just sort of had this moment of like, whoa, because it didn't feel like myself writing it. Like I didn't feel like I consciously came up with that line. It just sort of came out of me. And so that had a pretty big impact on me in that moment of writing. But again, I didn't know if it was going to impact others when I wrote it.
Well, about poetry, I mean, you teach poetry as
I
well.
do. I do.
So, are you a poet yourself? Would you call yourself that? Because,
I wouldn't, just because I don't, prose is really my medium. I love poetry and I love incorporating what I've learned about poetry into my prose writing. I think my prose is very influenced by poetry. But to be a poet, at least for me, means a dedicated practice of poetry, and that's not me. The poem that I wrote for Sadie for this book was the first poem I've written in years and years and years. And so, yeah, I wouldn't call myself a poet, but definitely influenced by it.
would you try to write more? Because that poem was beautiful.
Thank you. Possibly. We'll see. I mean, if it ever speaks to me, if there's a feeling in me where I think I need to get this out in the form of poetry specifically rather than in prose, absolutely, I'd follow that.
And while we're on the subject, um, the ending of the book,
Mm.
Anne starts to write. Why did we not see what she's writing?
So I've gotten this question from a few people. So there are two answers to this. So the first one is that, at least to me, what she writes is not important. It's the act of writing that is important. Like it's the point is not the if if you show a sentence, if you show a line, whatever it is, right? That's an ending in and of itself. That's, it can't be anything other than what it is on the page. But if you don't show that, then it's limitless. It can be anything. And that's what I wanted to leave readers with was that sense of possibility that Anne has with her, metaphorical blank page of life. And then the other reason is that Anne did not tell me. I really believe very strongly, I know it might sound a little weird, but characters tell you things and then they hold back on other things. And Anne refused to tell me what she was going to write. I feel very strongly that she told Sadie, and that's it. And I didn't get to be on that.
She wrote it. Okay, I can live with that. She wrote it for Sadie. Okay. 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 Um, let's see. We were discussing in the book club about Anne and Sadie as parents.
Hmm.
Um, just tell us what happened in your head with that.
Oh gosh, that's a big place to start from.
I,
So,
I have a few questions for, okay, wait.
okay, I'm
So
waiting.
someone asked, Anna has a revelation through discussions with her children where they explain how she never seemed happy during their childhood. This level of insight is incredible and it was conveyed exceptionally. It taps into my biggest fears as a mom.
Hmm.
And someone says, how did you manage to condense all those feelings from both parents and children, into these scenes? Was it a process that required many different conversation, rewrites between the characters, or was it more simple?
Oh gosh. So I did do a fair amount of rewriting. One way, again, I do maintain that I'm not a poet, but one way in which I do think I am similar to a poet in terms of my practice of writing is that every word counts for me. And in a way that is sometimes interferes with my ability to actually get words onto the page. It's not always a good thing, but every single word has been gone over with a fine-tooth comb in terms of how it appears on the page, in terms of how it sounds. And so I was very intentional about writing those scenes with Anne and her daughters specifically. I think in terms of constructing that that relationship, so I think many of us have had the experience of, either as children of struggling to connect with parents because of things that have happened in our past growing up, or in other cases, maybe struggling to connect with our children because of what we did when our children were growing up. And so I think the thing about romance is that one of the things I love about it is that it blends fantasy and truth, right? You can't have a romance without both elements. And fantasy, I think a lot of people interpret that as like the fantasy of finding, the perfect person for yourself and living happily ever after. Obviously, that's a reality for some of us, but it is a sort of broader fantasy, right? But I think in this case, in this book, the fantasy is not just about Anne finding Sadie. The fantasy is what would it be like to heal those relationships, right? What in terms of Claire and Brooke, especially Brooke, what would it be like to have your mother apologize to you, to say, you know what? I messed up. I hurt you because I was hurting and I can see you trying to break that cycle and I'm really proud of you. Like I think that there's a real power in experiencing that fantasy on the page, especially for folks who aren't able to access it in real life. So I really wanted to kind of make that fantasy believable because that was the other thing. You got to earn it. Like you can't just, have, Anne just kind of waltz into a conversation with her daughters and be like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine." Like I'm sorry. Like that's, it's just not going to work that way, right? You have to kind of get into it. And so I had to think about as I was writing those scenes, you know, what would kind of stack up for Anne that would get her to this insight where she could kind of let down some of her defensiveness because she's really defensive, I think, especially with Brooke, and get to a place where she can recognize what she's done and how it's impacted her daughters.
Well, the book is two spends 2 weeks after the prologue.
It's so the whole book takes place over almost a month, I think, but most of not including the prologue, but most of the action takes place in between. I think it's chapter 4 Yeah, the scene after the birthday party
Yeah.
where Anne and Sadie have a conversation, and Sadie finally is like, "You've been acting weird. What's going on?" So I think that point, as everything happens within a few days after that. But I do align. I think there's like a paragraph that mentions in the beginning of that chapter that Anne has like not talked to Sadie for 2 weeks about this. Like she's just been stewing. And I very purposefully like went really quickly because nobody wants to read about Anne just kind of sitting and going, should I talk to her? How do I do this? How do I? And it's like, no, let's get to the point where Anne is actually talking to her because that's way more interesting. So yeah, I think it's almost a month total within the main frame of the book.
So because I thought it was believable to have that many epiphanies in that short of a time.
Mhm.
But how did you make that work in your own writing and in your own process?
I think by spending so much time in the scenes and in those moments, the book is obviously not in real time, but it's fairly close to it. Like I don't skip days. I don't even skip like times of day, right? We're with them in the morning, the afternoon, the evening. And so I think being in the minutia of their emotions and their experiences, especially when those emotions and experiences are so intense and so overwhelming, I think makes the reader feel like maybe more time has passed than it actually has because so much has happened. I think there's a line when Brooke and Anne are talking on the phone, and Anne is just like, fine, I'm gay. We'll talk about it later, right? And poor Brooke is just like, wait, what? And then I think she says something like, did you decide this between our lunch yesterday and right now? Because it is absolutely wild, right? To think about like all of that, especially from Brooke and Claire's perspective, where their mother is sitting in front of them, saying incredibly gay things and then avowing, I am not a lesbian. Obviously, I'm not a lesbian. And then literally
Ew, no.
24 hours later, right? Maybe more like 35 hours later, then, she's saying, I'm gay, right? So I did
And
include
coming
that to
out
kind
to
of
the whole
acknowledge it.
family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did include that to kind of acknowledge, yes, everything is happening in a really compressed time, and I am aware of that, but let's, come with me here.
Yeah. Okay, Jamie?
Okay. Hi, Carrie.
Hello.
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties pulling up the quick Q&A portion on my phone.
No worries.
Good to have you here.
Good to be
I'm just
here.
looking at this. I'm looking at this question about Sadie's style, and there's a question about why did Sadie stop wearing her wigs?
So I think that she still will wear wigs in the future, but I mean, it's kind of an obvious in your face metaphor, but I did want the idea of the artifice is gone, right? That Sadie herself is sort of slowly deconstructing the parts of herself that she has kept away from everybody, including Anne, because she is, I think, in some respects even more walled off than Anne is, which I know is kind of wild to say, but I really do think that. And so, going to the desert, she can't, wear a wig because then, the metaphor kind of doesn't work, right? That she's sort of being more authentically who she is. I mean, obviously you can wear a wig and authentically be yourself. Of course you can, which is why I do think Sadie will continue wearing wigs, but I wanted to use the metaphor. And also, I just didn't want to deal with the logistics of having a wig in those scenes because I would have to acknowledge it more. And I was like, I don't want to write about that. So there was a practical element too.
Is
That
it
does make sense. I was thinking about the way that it's Anne was walled off until she realized who she was and that she opened up to it, and then the floodgates open and she's like, sex all the time, let's do this.
Yep,
Here I am, I'm a lesbian. Where Sadie was like the first one to kind of approach it, and then all of a sudden seemed like she panicked and freaked out, closed down, and didn't know what
exactly.
to do with it once she actually brought it out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Anne and Sadie are obviously opposites in a lot of respects, but I think the way in which they're most different is that so Anne is extremely repressed and unaware of herself and so many aspects of herself, especially her pain. But once she is able to see it, she leaps into action, no half measures, right? It's something that I really enjoyed writing, where she's like, I'm going. I figured this out and I don't want to waste any time. Whereas Sadie, I think, is very self-aware. She's been aware that she's been in love with Anne for about a year at the point of the main part of the book, but she does not act. And so I think those ways were kind of that relationship, that asymmetry was really fun to play with.
can we go
Very
back to
good.
the wigs for a little bit? Because
Yeah.
Sadie is Jewish.
Yes.
And there is a tradition of wearing wigs in Judaism.
Yeah, for Orthodox women, yes.
Yeah, is there like a connection between the two?
I didn't think of that actually. I weirdly enough, and I'll get back to the Jewish thing in a second, but I had a friend who's reading the book and was texting me yesterday, and she said for the first half of the book, I thought Sadie was a black woman, and I was like, really? Like, how did you think that? Like, there's a white woman, there's two white women on the cover, and she said, well, Hal and Fred and all that, and I was like, okay, I could see how you could assume, but really, and then she said the wigs. And I was like, oh, right. You're like, now I could see because, many black women do wear wigs. So I was like, oh, that's where you're getting it from. Okay. But no, Sadie is a white Ashkenazi Jew like myself. So yeah, I didn't even make that connection, Kaz, until you just said it to, Orthodox women wearing shtetl. Like, I think there's a way that, I mean, Sadie's Judaism is actually extremely important to her. We don't get a lot of it because we're not in her POV. I imagine her, I mean, she goes to temple very regularly. She's a very active member.
She
I
loves her
imagine her as a
rabbi.
member of a Reconstructionist synagogue, so like a very liberal kind of space, like the kind of space where, you don't need to believe in anything other than community, right? Like you don't even need to believe in God, but you're part of this, space. So she's very, very, almost as far as you can get as a practicing Jew from an Orthodox woman.
And she and her rabbi is like her therapist kind of coach, life
Exactly.
coach
Yeah, Rabbi Aviva.
person. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Um, okay. Jamie, do you have more
Yeah, I
feedback?
have a question. Yeah, a question from Avery. Is there any reader response that's particularly stuck with you?
Oh, yes, but I don't want to share them actually because they're so personal, and I feel very strongly that, folks have shared very, very private things with me in a way that, I mean, no one actually has said like, don't share this, but to me, I mean, the vulnerability of it is the
Hmm.
implicit ask of like, this is going to be between you and me. So I won't give specific examples, but I will say, I mean, people have talked about their lives, about their relationship with their mothers, about their relationship with their own children, about the fact that they are unable to come out, and, connection. I will say there was one reader, and I'm going to be very vague here as to not impugn on their privacy, but there was one reader who is in an environment where they are unable to be out, and an environment that is almost as different as you could get potentially from Anne and Sadie's world, which is very, white, upper class, like Los Angeles, industry focused. Like it's this very kind of narrow thing. But this reader said that they identified so much with Anne, despite the fact that their lives in so many respects are completely dissimilar. But this reader identified with Anne's process and with Anne's realizations. And that was really powerful for me to see that I had been able to reach this reader with a character who in so many ways was just diametrically opposed. So yeah, I mean, I would just say any reader response of, from people who have, been genuinely touched by this book and want to tell me, not just that they were touched by it, but how and why. I mean, all of those are staying
Hmm.
with me.
Yeah, that sounds really powerful. Yeah. There's another question. Was Sadie's inability to address Anne's eating disorder and or her drinking problem or even her own inadequacies as a parent representative of the executive function issues many women with ADHD have? That's from Verity.
Oh, that's so interesting. I did not think of it
Complex.
that way.
Yeah.
I also very much believe very strongly that a book is far more than what a writer intends, right? So a book is I think a book once it's published is very much, there's a relationship between the book and the reader, and every reader has an individual relationship with the book, which means that whatever you find in it is yours and is a thing. So I think, that's a completely valid connection to make, even though I never even thought about it that way. Yeah, I find Sadie's struggle to talk about the hard stuff to be one of the more complicated parts of her character, and one of the parts that gave me pause actually the most when I was writing it, because the thing is, I mean, she's been I see her as someone who has been deeply worried about Anne for a very long time and making the choice to not say anything. I think because
Mhm.
she is afraid of blowing up this relationship that is so important to her. She's afraid, I think, that if she confronts Anne, Anne will just be like, get the hell away from me. I don't want to deal with this, which is, I don't know that Anne would have, but I think is a very realistic risk. And so she decided to stay silent about it. And so thinking about that in the context of these two women getting together, I mean, Anne is immediate, like, let's get married. Like, I'm in, like, going from 0 to 100 right away. And Sadie, very understandably, I think, in a lot of respects, is like, no, we got to hold on. But I think one of the reasons that it's so important for them to wait and spend time together as a couple. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of growing both of them have to do individually and together. But I think Sadie really needs to work on the fact that she didn't address that to Anne because, like, within the context of, an intimate relationship, whether we're talking like a very close platonic one or, a romantic relationship, you got to talk about the hard things. And so she wasn't ready to do that. And so I imagine, even though I didn't write it in there, I imagine that both Sadie and Anne get into therapy after the events of the book. And it might take Anne a little bit longer to be willing to do that. And so I hope very much that Sadie would work on that part of her that was so unwilling to confront this painful thing that, really ideally she would have talked to Anne about.
Yeah,
She did say that she
agree.
was gonna visit with the rabbi and do
Mhm.
some self-exploring stuff. So
Yeah.
kind of the rabbi
Yeah.
therapist.
Yeah, a
It's
little bit.
in
I
there.
think I think I think Aviva's like her stepping stone on the way to,
Right.
a dedicated therapist.
True. Let's go back to the children and the parenting. Yoni asked a question on the forum. She said, how was the experience of writing Anne and Sadie in the ways that they're bad parents, the ways they
Mhm.
hurt their children with judgment and comments they can't quite stop making. Did you have versions of this story with more or less judgment and reaction to the way in which they hurt their children by people around them?
Yeah, yeah. So Anne in the original fanfic, certainly, and even in the first draft of the second draft, Anne was a lot harsher, I think. I have a higher tolerance for harsh characters. If you've read Loser of the Year, I mean, Gillian Reed is an incredibly harsh person in a lot of respects. And I enjoy harsh characters, so they don't, when I either write them or read them, they don't, I think, impact me in the way that they do, or their cruelty doesn't necessarily impact me in the way that it does a lot of readers, very understandably so. And so I pulled back quite a bit on Anne. Like there's that one moment where early on when Claire arrives at the party and Claire has this news about, we've got this, mannequin, right? We got the one mannequin in Neiman Marcus. And, James' reaction is like, that's great, right? He's really supportive. And then Anne says, just one mannequin. And she means in the final version, and I really do intend this, she means like, why wouldn't they have given you more? You deserved more. Uh, and just is not able to communicate that. And of course, Claire hears it as criticism because she's been criticized by her mother her entire life. But in the original, the intent was for Anne to be like, really, that's it? Just one mannequin? But it just felt too harsh. And with a character like Anne, who is so repressed and so closed off, in so much pain, you got to be really, really careful, I think, especially in the beginning part of a story about how you bring readers in, because I did not want readers to encounter Anne early on and just go like, oh, like screw this. Like she's awful. Like, no, because then you're not rooting for her, right? So it was important to kind of tampen that down.
Um, Did do you think of Anne and Sadie as kind of a soft version of an ice queen versus cinnamon roll thingy?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Anne is an ice queen who has begun to melt in the context of her relationship with Sadie.
Yeah.
I think very much so, but she is an ice queen in all other areas of her life. I think one thing that is interesting, an interesting, at least to me, difference between Anne and a lot of conventional ice queens is that she is not in a position of power, which most ice queens tend to be. I mean, yes, she does, she has an immense position of privilege, right, as a extremely wealthy white woman, right, who has a ton of financial and racial mobility. but she doesn't have a literal position, right? Like a job, right? In which she has a lot of power and control over other people. But I still do very much see her as an ice queen because her journey is still the same kind of general arc is that she's got a ton of walls. She's unable to emotionally connect for the most part. And I do maintain that until she starts to realize that, she's gay, there's still a huge part of her that's held back from Sadie, right? Like, even though she's more open with Sadie than with anyone else, but like, it's not that much compared to, what true emotional intimacy would be. So I definitely see her as an ice queen. And then, Sadie is absolutely the sunshine character. I loved writing Sadie so much. I love her outlook. I love her optimism. And so that felt very necessary to pair with Anne's. I won't say Anne is pessimistic exactly, but I think Anne has a lot of trouble looking past her pain, even when she's not able to see that it's pain. And so someone like Sadie is absolutely necessary to kind of jar her out of that perspective and seeing, something more light.
I'm mindful of the time. I'm sorry to interrupt like that, but because we usually have like half an hour. I have a few more questions.
I'll stay as long as you want me to. I'm having a great time.
Okay, great. Well, get your sleeping bag. Um, but if anyone needs to leave or they have other plans, thank you for joining us. And if it is you that has won the giveaway, then you can send us an email and we'll figure it out. It will be fine. Um, okay, let's go on. Jamie, do you
Let's
have a
do it.
Yeah, I have a comment from Kayla. She said, I just want to say to Carrie, it's so impressive that it's impossible to tell what parts of the story were written 10 years ago and which parts you wrote recently.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kayla. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, the cohesiveness of the book was a big part of the quote unquote rewrite and addition and making it into a standalone novel. And you didn't ask this, but I'm going to talk about it because this is my opening to do so. So this is the only time I will ever take a fan fiction and translate it into an original work. Loser of the Year was entirely original. The book I'm working on now is entirely original. I'm not gonna use fanfic again. It's to me at least it's way harder than creating something from the ground up because you're working with these bones that you don't necessarily have good perspective on because they're so close to you, right? And so it's very, very hard, I think, to figure out what needs to stay and what needs to go and how to make this into a narrative that works as an original piece because I think one of the hardest parts about taking a fanfic and making it into an original story is that with a fanfic, you have got an audience who is already 100% invested in these characters, right? So when I wrote, the original fanfic, it was being read by people who loved the characters Grace and Frankie. They were already on board, right? So I didn't have to do any work to convince any of my readers, like, hey, you want to spend time with these people because that's why they're reading the fic. But of course, with an original book, you can't do that, right? Like you have to give readers a reason to root for and care about these people, and you have to be able to give them an introduction to who they are and kind of bring them on board because that's the only way that a romance is going to be able to work. If you don't feel like you have a solid sense of who these people are, and if you're not rooting for them separately and together, then there's no buy-in. So that was extremely challenging for me.
How important are fanfics for you, and do you still write them?
I don't. That was well, I won't say it was the last one. I wrote one more short fic for Grace and Frankie after I put the original fanfic on the big one on hold. I'll never say never. I have written fanfic on and off for a very long time, never as intensely as I did for Grace and Frankie. But and so fanfic is important to me in the sense that it helped shape me as a writer. I think I learned a lot about writing in long form from writing the original fanfic. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm also grateful to fanfic because without it, I would not be married to my wife. I discovered her through her fan fiction. That's how we got to know each other. So yeah, I will always value and love and praise fanfic. There's so much good stuff out there. But I can't, at least for right now, I'm never going to say never, but for right now, I can't see myself writing it.
Is there like a series that you kind of have an inkling about now or that you've seen before that's not Grace and Frankie?
No, not really, honestly.
Not The Devil Wears Prada too?
No, unfortunately, no. Yeah, I think for me to really want to write fic, there has to be a hole in the source material that I feel like needs to be filled and needs to be expanded upon, that something is truly lacking in that I'm like, okay, I have to go plug that in and figure that out. Like why is it that way? Try to make it make sense and so on. And in terms of the media that I've watched, like I'll say Hacks for an example, another, a television show about an older woman. I love Hacks. I love it so much. I absolutely ship Deborah and Ava, the kind of age gap, they're platonic in the
Yeah.
show, but like there's this very romantic vibe between them. I love them, right? But I
Hmm.
have zero interest in writing fanfic for Hacks because I'm getting everything that I want from the show, like, which is great, including an extremely lesbian episode that just aired last week. If you haven't watched the show, I highly recommend it.
I have a quick question from Rach. She's wondering, is the original Grace and Frankie fanfic available because there's not enough of those out there?
Yes, it is. I think if you sort by kudos, at least at one point it was the highest kudos fic in the fandom. Not to like, toot my own horn or anything, but if you sort by kudos, you'll find it. The original title is Anyone Who Has Become. So yeah, I left it up there. One thing I really appreciate about my publisher is that I think there are some publishers who require you, especially in trad pub spaces, to take down fan fiction when you publish something as original work. My publisher does not require me to do that, any of us who have adapted fic to do that, which I really appreciate because there are going to be a lot of people who have a relationship with the fanfic who maybe they don't even want to read the book or they don't know it exists or whatever. And I want them to be able to have the fic if they ever want to go back and read it.
Cool. Cass?
Um, I have a question from Dana. What surprised you most about the story as you wrote it?
Ooh, what a good question. It's one that I'm not sure I know how to answer. I think what surprised me was how painful it got in places that in ways that I wasn't expecting and in ways that are, I mean, the original fanfic, there's pain in it. Absolutely, that's part of it. But there are moments in this story where I've expect like so the scene in the desert in Joshua Tree before Anne and Sadie spin together and Anne's looking up at the stars and she's talking to a higher power she doesn't really believe in, and that part is in the original fanfic, but I really expanded it for the book and I didn't know that I was going to do that. I did that actually very late. I made a lot of late changes to this, and I'm really glad I did because I think they strengthened the story, but I added parts to it that weren't in the original. And when Anna's asking, did you keep this from me, right? My whole life, did you keep this from me to this higher power? And then a line that wasn't in the original is, do you think I deserved it? Which I think is such a painful and difficult question to ask. And I think, so Anne and I have a lot of differences, like a lot. Namely, I came out in my mid to late 20s. It's a very, very different experience than coming out at 60. But I think a lot of us, Sapphic specifically, have this experience, no matter what we believe or don't, right? This feeling of maybe, why didn't I know sooner? For those of us who figure it out a little later in life, like, why didn't I know sooner? And what did I do? Like, or what didn't I do? In order to figure it out? Like, was it some kind of deficiency in me that led me to not
Mm.
realize this and to be separated from this part of myself? So that was a pretty painful place to go to with Anne, but she really wanted me to take her there, so I did. So I guess that surprised me a little.
Just quick for the fanfic, what's your AO3 handle,
Oh,
Tressa?
it's Ellie Dash, ELLYDASH.
Okay, I cannot repeat that. So
Here,
you,
can I can type in the chat, right? Can I or can
I
I?
don't
No,
know.
it's disabled. Okay, never mind.
Uh, it's fine. You'll have to see the YouTube thing and scroll back to this point.
It's fine.
Great. Let's see. A lot of people want to know. Um, Claire.
Wait, real quick. It was Ellie
Yes,
Dash, right?
that is correct.
ELLYDASH.
That's
Okay,
it,
I just
Jamie.
put
Yeah,
it in the
Oh,
chat.
I saw it
okay.
pop up.
Okay,
I was seeing
cool.
like dashes.
That is
in my
correct.
head. I went, "Whoo."
Okay.
Uh, so let's talk Claire,
Yes.
We love
Let's.
because
Claire.
I can tell you everyone loves Claire. Is she gonna get her own book? Because she needs one.
So, I will say that I have been taking notes on a story for Claire because I do want to tell her story. She
Yay.
has a story. There's a lot of, this is actually kind of similar to what I was talking about with fanfic, right? Is like, do you feel like there's something unwritten? And for Claire, absolutely. There's so much, right? Like she does get to this place with her mother where she's kind of starting to heal some of those old wounds, starting to, emphasis on starting to. There's a long way to go. But Claire, I think, really has not spent a lot of time looking inwardly either. And she really, I think, has a ton to work on. So I won't give too much information, but I am imagining, I'm taking notes on a romance between Claire and her ex Eloise, who is mentioned in the birthday party chapter. And I think
Mm.
Claire says later on too that she ruined the best thing she ever had by not being
Yeah.
emotionally available. So second chance romance for Claire with Eloise is the plan.
Yay.
I have other things in mind, but I think I'll keep it there. I have to finish the book I'm working on first, so it'll be a little while until I can get to it. But I do keep kind of coming back to my document and taking notes because I'm excited about the ideas that are coming.
Oh, there are a lot of ideas and a lot of people, a lot of happy people here now.
Yay! I'm so glad
Yay!
you all love Claire. I love her too. She's my baby. They're all my babies.
Um, what is next? Because you have another book coming that's not Claire.
Yes,
Can
I
you tell a
do.
Audiobook.
little bit more about that?
I can. So I will also hold back on too much information about this one because I haven't yet signed a contract. I'm still finishing up the first draft. I'm really close. But this book it's Age Gap, Ice Queen, Rivals to Lovers, Rivals to Allies to Lovers, realistically, and Second Chance. So there's like a ton of tropes in it.
Whoa. Trope
It's
galore.
about, there's tons, yeah. It is about as different from the second draft as you could possibly get, which does make me a little bit nervous, right? Because obviously I've been so appreciative and grateful for how people have received this book. And also I'm like, oh God, I hope you like what I write next because it's going to be very different. It's very plot heavy, high octane, high energy, the spiciest thing I've ever written by far. And it is a political romance specifically. So, and that is, I know, a little bit of a risk in this day and age. I should clarify every single time I talk about this book, which I've done a little bit recently. Every single time I talk about it, I have to clarify that this book is set in an alternate universe where Donald Trump does not exist. Because nobody wants to read, I mean, not even just a romance novel, any fictional world where that asshole is allowed to like be in the back, right? Even like no. So this is like
No.
this diverges at the end of Obama's second term. That's the way that I think about it. Although I haven't mentioned Obama in the book because it feels weird to do that. So there's like a mix of references to like actual politicians like Richard Nixon or Reagan, and like references, not like on page, obviously. And then fictional politicians who are in the world of the story. I am having a blast writing it. It is so much fun. I am a politics nerd. I have been obsessed with presidential politics specifically since I was in high school then, since the whole Bush versus Gore debacle that happened in Florida. And and I was fascinated by all of this like minutia about hanging chads and how it all worked and all of that. So I got really into politics as a result of that. So I'm having a great time writing this and also like forcing myself to hold back on most of the politics because I'm like, people are here for the romance. This is a political romance. This is not a book about politics with a romance in it, right? So I know what people are here for. So I'm holding back on the politics as much as I can and keeping it entirely focused on like what is relevant to these characters and to their relationship.
Did you need to write something completely different from the second draft?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't consciously choose that. I've had this book in the back of my mind for a while. My wife could tell you I've been talking about it to her for ages. And I had it has been in my head like fully formed. And for 2 years, I think I was still working on Loser of the Year when I first had this idea for it. But I do think I just felt so relieved, honestly. Like I am so proud of the second draft. I'm so proud of it. I'm so glad that I wrote it. I'm so glad that it's in the world. But it was a really rough writing experience for me. And so turning to Running Mates, where, there is angst, right? There's plenty, it's not a fluffy book at all. There's definitely angst, but it's not the kind of like soul rendering stuff that you get in the second draft. So I'm like, oh, this is great. Like this is normal trauma. Yay. Like just more kind of lighter stuff, and just getting to have fun with the drama and the plot. And like there's tons of external conflict. So I'm really, really enjoying it.
Can I ask a
Well,
quick follow-up question on the
Yeah.
second draft? Is there audiobook in the works and has a narrator been chosen? It's one of the questions we got.
So I know that there will be an audiobook. I do not have any more information than that, unfortunately. In terms of timeline, probably around the end of the year. I do not know who it's going to be. No clue. My publisher selects the narrator.
Okay.
I might have, it's probably too late at this point. I think if I had emailed and said, "Oh, can I request so and so," that my publisher would take that into account. But I have not done that. Crystal Hammond, who narrated Loser of the Year, I did not select them. I had no part in that, but I loved what they did with Loser. So I was like, cool, I got really lucky. Hopefully I'll get lucky again with whoever I get for the second draft. But yeah, there will be an audiobook. It will take a little while to come out.
Awesome.
okay. Well, Aaron, for one, can't wait for the new book that's coming out. He says,
Thank
"Can we
you.
move to the universe where Trump doesn't exist?"
Yes, yes. It's
Great.
like the Republican in the book is like normal odious, I should say. Like he's pretty odious. This book, by the way, is like there's a fair amount of ideology in it. There has to be. Like it's a book about politics. Like my characters have very strong ideological stances, leftist stances. And there is a Republican. I just wrote actually a debate scene with the Republican candidate in it, and he's pretty awful, but like he is not Trump awful. Like we're just talking like normal, like run of the mill, like what an asshole, as opposed to fascist. So, that
Yeah.
was kind of nice to kind of immerse myself in this fantasy of like, what would it be like to have a political world where the worst thing that is happening on page is this guy's being a total dick. Like that was a lot of fun.
We can handle that. Um, if you Sapphic fiction in the last, I think, 10 years has exploded. There are
Yes. Oh
so
yes.
many good books, so many
Yes.
new authors, so many. Which authors do inspire you?
Oh, so I have learned a lot from a lot of different authors. I read, and I've done this, I think, to some extent, even before I started working on Loser of the Year, because I love craft. I love talking about like that nerdy stuff, like how is a book put together, right? And there are a lot of authors that I really admire and have learned from. Claire Ashton, J.J. Arias, Allie North a little bit more recently, Lee Winter, absolutely. I'll mention Haley Cass too, and I'll just give an example for that. Something that Haley is so gifted at, and something that does not come as naturally to me, is getting the feelings right. A romance lives or dies by the feelings. If you don't get the feelings right, no one is on board. No one wants to read, right? Or people read, but then they don't connect to your book. And so, reading how Haley does it, and also talking to Haley about how she does it, has been so helpful in terms of thinking about like how I want to get in there. So yeah, I really do admire the writers who are, really good at things that I may sort of still be working on. And I do have to mention, I think it goes without saying, but I have to mention my wife, who is to me the most brilliant writer in the world. She is my favorite writer, hands down. I love her work so much that I literally have it tattooed on me. Can't really see it here. Yeah, the way it's turned. But it's a line from The Woman from the Waves, which is my favorite book by hers. And it's in her handwriting, and it says, "Something moves the earth and stars." If you've read it, it's the beginning of the monologue that, spoiler, the great mayor gives. And then she has actually, in my handwriting, she has a line from Sadie's poem tattooed on her arm. It's "Tell me like the tide, tell me again." So
Mm.
yeah. So anyway, she's my favorite writer. I don't just have her words on me because I love her and because she's my person and, my forever person. I have her words on me because I admire and connect to her writing and love it so much. And I have loved it long before I ever, knew who she was as a person, long before we ever actually talked.
Um, Talking about other authors, Jay. asked the
Mm.
question.
Ooh, hi,
Uh,
Sandra.
are there any plans for a short story novella longer work that fills the gap between the prologue and chapter one, and or that gives us Sadie's POV?
Oh, yeah. So I would love to do that. I'm wondering like if it's going to be just feasible in terms of the amount of time that I have. I also have like besides the book I'm working on and this novella idea I have for Claire, I have another book project that I'm also taking notes on, and I really want to dive into that because I'm really excited about it. So I don't know if practically speaking I'll be able to fit it in, but there is so much material there, right? Like I think one of the things I was actually kind of worried about was whether or not readers would buy this leap because we're going from first meeting to like, hey, in chapter one, they're best friends. And like, I had to sell their relationship. You can't just say, now Sadie and Anne are best friends. You have to show that. And that's a lot harder to do if you don't have that growth, right? I think a lot of, not all certainly, but a lot of friends to lovers romances, you see that friendship kind of develop, even if they know each other before the novel begins, you see the kind of slower growth. And I just didn't have the space to do that. And it wasn't the story I was telling. But having said that, I would really love to kind of delve into how they became closer. And I would love to write in Sadie's POV. I think that would be a really interesting headspace to be in. And yeah, I would just sort of love to see. I imagine that she just pestered the hell out of Anne like a lot until Anne was like, "Fine, fine, I'll go to the Getty with you. Fine, I'll go out to lunch with you." Like, just sort of giving in. And then Anne is kind of went, "Oh, actually, I'm having a good time. What is this?" But it would be really fun to explore that timeline and also, to experience the moment where Sadie is like, "Oh shit, I'm in love with this woman, this straight woman." So that would be fun.
Exactly that moment. It's like, when did that happen?
Yeah.
Um, can we have two more questions?
It's fine with me. Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie, do you have more?
Um, I just had one at the end there. Deborah's wondering if you're going to be at the GCLS conference.
I am not, unfortunately, which I'm really sad about. For those who don't know, I'm an English professor in my day job. I have a conference that I have to go to that I signed up for before I knew when GCLS was going to be. So I will be out of the country during that time. So I have to miss it. I'm really bummed about it.
Mm.
I love GCLS. I've gone the last 2 years. I've had a blast. It's just always such a fun time. I love the panels. I love getting to talk to people. Just the sense of camaraderie and community. It's so fun. But I will be next year, I will be going to CasCon, which I've done the last couple of years. For those of you who aren't aware, CasCon is a Sapphic romance reader convention that is put on by Haley Cass and her wife, Monica McCallan. And it's been relatively small the last few years. Like the first one was like half a day, and then the last one, I think some of you in here were there. The last one was like a whole day, and it was like multiple events. But they are planning something really, really big for 27. So it's going to be in Philadelphia, which is very convenient for Rosalind and me. And there are going to be between 30 and 40 Sapphic romance authors. I'm not going to share any names because, it's still kind of fluctuating. I do know from talking to people who are going to be there, I do know some of the names, but I know Haley and Monica are going to do their own announcement. But trust me, like some of your favorite people are absolutely going to be at this convention. It's going to be a blast. I think it's a 2 day convention, 1 day with panels, and 1 day with sign and greet and all of that. So I will be there for that, and I'm really excited about it.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I have another not really an ending question, but still one that's very cool from
Mhm.
Maru. She says, I wonder how the writing process works for her, particularly because she and her wife are both authors. And if you're working on two different stories and you're ranting about them, you're like, who said that? Mine or yours?
Well, we do. It's so funny because we are really attracted to the same kinds of dynamics and characters and themes. So there are a lot of commonalities, I think, between our works. I think, The Woman from the Waves and the second draft are kind of like soulmates themselves in a lot of respects, even though those books could not be more different in a number of respects, right? So I don't get confused. She doesn't really get confused. We talk like all the time about our writing. Our writing is probably at least 30, if not 30%, if not more, of our relationship. And it is something that is an absolute delight to me. She is my alpha reader. She reads everything that I write as I write it. I am lucky enough to get to read everything she writes as she writes it. We talk about, when I get stuck, I'm able to just be like, hey, baby, can you talk this through with me? Because I can't figure this out. And almost always by talking it out with her, I'm able to realize, okay, this is where I need to go. And so that has just been, I really do feel like I've got this secret weapon because I have a wife. I have Rosalind Sinclair as my wife, and I am able to, make use of her brilliance and her talents and her insight in ways that absolutely make my own writing better.
Will you ever co-write a book?
So we have talked about that. Again, it's it's got to be so far off. Rosalind's got like a lot of really cool stuff coming up herself, and which I will not talk about, even though I'm like bursting to do it, but she has to do it first. So she's got a lot on her plate. As I've said, like I'm working on my third book. I want to do this Claire novella. I have this fourth book in mind. So it's going to probably be a while, but we do have an idea for a historical romance, actually, like a 1950s historical romance. And I won't say much more about it than that. But we have some stuff that's written, and I have written with her before, just not publicly. She and I like write for each other, and we combine things and connect and all of that. So I already know that writing with her is an absolute pleasure. She is the only person, by the way, I would ever write with. Writing feels like such an intimate activity to me that I just feel like I could not do it with anyone but her. And so, yeah, so I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic that one day we'll do it because she and I are both very, very willing. It's just a matter of finding the time.
Tressa says, take my money. So I think that's kind of the whole vibe in the whole group here. I think
Oh,
so.
thank you.
Okay, let's get to the end of this
Okay,
because I mean we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but people have lives,
it's really
alas,
flattering.
and you have to get back to writing. Go, go, go.
I met
Um,
my word count today. I met my word count right before I came in, so I'm very proud of
well,
myself.
they're still going
Yay.
over.
I do have a
Um,
deadline. The end of June is my deadline, so I'm getting close.
oh, see, I thought so. I was getting the vibe that you had to go. No, I'm kidding. Let's talk giveaway.
Oh yeah.
We talked about or I asked for a number between 0 and 100,
Yeah.
and I have an exact same number from somebody
Ooh,
because I wrote down before. Can anyone see?
56. Sadie
56,
56.
Sage.
and Claire Donier
Yep. Exactly.
had
Ah,
She chose Sadie's
56,
age.
yay, Claire!
and
Congratulations.
we picked that because it's Sadie's age.
Oh, I love that.
That was the idea. So
I love that.
Claire, if you could send us an email and we can connect you to Carrie and then
Excellent.
yeah, so
Yay.
sapphicobookclub@gmail.com. That will be fine. Final question. Where can we find you? How can we follow you? How can we be the first to know what's next?
So I am at Bird Rights basically everywhere. I am mostly on Instagram and Threads. So it's Bird, Byrd, and then Rights is Writes. So yeah, mostly on Instagram and Threads these days. And then I have a newsletter that you can sign up for. Highly recommended. People who are subscribed to my newsletter get a free, very spicy short story prequel to Loser of the Year. If you have read the book, it is, and I'm going to try to not spoil things for people who might not have read Loser of the Year. It tells you what happened that night in college with Jillian's first time with a woman. And so if you've read it, you know what I mean by that. And so that's what that story is about. So you get that for free, and that is only available to subscribers. And then you also get other little fun, goodies every so often. I need to find a way to make this available to more than to people who are just signing up now. But I did just send out a newsletter a few days ago that included some bonus scenes from the second draft. And again, like I'm not posting those anywhere else; those are just for subscribers. And that's where all of like the newest news, like when I start talking about my third book, that is where I will talk about it first before I talk about it on socials. So please do sign up. You can sign up if you go to carriebird.com. So super easy. Homepage, there's a link to sign up for the newsletter. You just put your email in and that is it. So super easy, super fast.
That's great. Okay, I want to thank you very much for indulging us with all the answers and all the tidbits and everything we wanted to know about
Oh,
your writing and this book, of course, a second draft. So thank you for coming back to Sapphic World Book Club. Thank you everyone for coming and having
Can,
a
can I
lively
just say,
discussion
can
with
I
us.
just say, I just
Yeah.
want before everyone goes, because I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you, first of all, to Sapphic World Book Club for having me. This is just such a delight. I had a great time when I talked about Loser. I've had an amazing time now. I appreciate so much that you have provide this space for our community and that you give authors a chance to kind of come and talk with readers. It's amazing. And I also want to thank everybody who took the time to be here today, especially those of you who have stuck around a whole extra half hour
Half
past the
hour.
time we were supposed to go. And thank you. Thank you so much for reading this book. Thank you for loving it. Thank you for caring for it. This little piece of me that I put into the world. It is one of genuinely, I wrote this in my newsletter. I mean this. It is one of the greatest gifts I have ever been given, people's responses to this book. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I
Oh,
can't say
well.
anything more
I
except
was
that
going to say you can't really top that.
no,
Thank you,
no,
Carrie.
thank you. The only thing I can say is that June 13, we're going to be back with a new Sapphic Book Club meeting. And the book we're going to read for June is J.J. Hale, Sweet
Ooh,
Surrender.
nice.
Okay, so watch our socials and you'll see also this Q&A there on the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everyone.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.